The smell of burning sage wrapped around the clearing, sharp and choking, sinking into my lungs with every breath. I stood at the outer edge of the stone circle, my plain white dress lifting and falling with the cool autumn wind. I didn't need to look up to know they were watching me. I could feel their stares pressing into my skin, heavy and judging. This ritual had been part of pack life for as long as anyone remembered. Before mating season, omegas were blessed with fertility under the open sky. It was meant to be hopeful, sacred. For me, it was just another reminder of what my body refused to give. Eleanor, Elder Mirror called out. Her voice sounded dry, thin, like leaves snapping under a boot. Step forward. My heart slammed wildly as I moved toward the center of the circle. Cold stone met my bare feet. The elders stood in a wide ring around me, their faces tight with pity or quiet disgust. Behind them, the rest of the pack crowded together. Some watched with bored curiosity. Others had already turned away. To them, I wasn't worth the effort. A barren omega didn't deserve attention. My hand went to the silver pendant resting against my chest. It was the last thing my mother had given me before she died. A small waxing moon, polished smooth from years of touch. She had told me it meant growth, light returning even after the longest darkness. On her final night, she'd whispered that hope never truly dies. I had carried those words like a shield, even when they felt like a lie. Elder Mira lifted both hands, and the low chatter vanished at once. She stepped toward me, holding a small clay bowl filled with red ochre. This was the moment others waited for, the blessing mark painted on the forehead, proof of the moon goddess's favor. People of the pack, she said, her voice steady as it echoed through the trees, we gather as we always have to honor tradition and bless our omegas. I stared at the ground, counting the tiny stones beneath my feet so I wouldn't break. I had stood here before. 3 years in a row, 3 times, watching others receive the mark while I stood empty, then her voice changed. The goddess, Elder Mira continued, quieter now, sharper, does not bless everyone. A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Heat burned my cheeks, but I lifted my chin anyway. I refused to bow, I refused to cry. Eleanor has been confirmed barren by our healers, she said, though no one needed to hear it again. This fate was sealed when she came of age. No prayer or ritual can undo the goddess's will. My fingers curled tightly around my pendant. Barren, cursed. The word echoed in my head like an accusation, as if I had earned this punishment. Elder Mira stepped back, leaving me exposed in the center of the circle. You may return to your place. She wasn't cruel, that almost made it worse. I turned to step away and froze. Movement caught my eye near the trees. A tall figure stood beneath the shadow of an ancient oak, broad shoulders unmistakable even in the dim light. My breath hitched painfully. King Raphael Blackstone, the Alpha King, the ruler of 7 territories, fear and disbelief tangled inside me. He never attended pack rituals, not small ones, not ever. His amber eyes found mine, sharp and unreadable. For a single heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. The air tightened, something unseen passed between us, heavy, electric, raising the hairs along my arms. Then he turned and vanished into the forest, silent as a ghost. I barely noticed the rest of the ceremony. My thoughts spun wildly, chasing questions with no answers. By the time it ended, dusk had settled in, painting the forest in long shadows. The pack drifted away, laughing and talking about the feast to come. The blessed omegas would be presented tonight. Chosen, desired, I wouldn't be there, I never was, Eleanor. I turned to see Lisa walking toward me, her smile gentle but strained. The fresh red mark glowed on her forehead, bright against her dark skin. Don't, I said softly before she could speak. Please don't say it. She stopped, then nodded. I wasn't going to. After a pause, she added, I thought maybe we could skip the feast, go to the hot springs instead. The sky's clear tonight, perfect for stars. Something tight in my chest loosened. I managed a small smile, grateful beyond words. That sounds perfect. Together, we left the clearing behind. The sounds of the pack faded as we followed the narrow forest path, the night closing in around us. For now, the judgment was behind me, and for the first time that evening, I didn't feel completely alone. The forest was swallowed by night, the full moon rising high above the trees like a silent watcher. Moonlight spilled through the thick branches, breaking apart as it touched the ground in pale, shifting shapes. Did you see him? Lisa whispered suddenly, her voice tight with wonder. The Alpha King, he was watching the ritual. I saw him, I answered, forcing my voice to stay calm. Inside, my chest fluttered in a way I didn't understand. Those sharp amber eyes had lingered on me longer than they should have. I couldn't imagine why a king would care about a small pack's fertility ceremony. They say he's searching for a mate, Lisa said, nudging me with a knowing look. After his queen died last winter, the council won't leave him alone. They want his bloodline secured. He won't find what he's looking for with me, I said quickly. The words felt sharp and bitter as they left my mouth. Lisa went quiet, regret hit me at once. I'm sorry, I added softly. Days like this just make everything harder. I know, she replied gently. But Eleanor, not being able to bear children doesn't erase your worth. There's more to life than that. I wished our pack believed the same. Among us, an Omega's value was tied to her ability to reproduce. Without it, you were considered useless, another mouth to feed, another burden. If I hadn't been a healer, I wouldn't have been allowed to stay at all. The hot springs came into view as the moon climbed higher. Steam rolled off the water, drifting like smoke through the cold air. The place was empty, everyone else lost in music and food back at the feast. I slipped out of my white dress and stepped into the water, heat wrapping around me and easing the tight knots in my body. Lisa followed, sinking in beside me with a soft sigh. "I could stay here forever," she murmured, leaning back to stare at the stars scattered across the dark sky. I closed my eyes, letting the warm, mineral-rich water relax my aching muscles, if only forever were possible. We sat quietly for a while. Water lapped gently against the stone and an owl called somewhere far away. Then a strange sensation crawled up my spine, a sharp awareness. I was being watched. I opened my eyes and scanned the trees. Nothing but shadows and silver light stared back at me. Still, the feeling refused to fade, raising goosebumps along my arms. "Lisa," I whispered, "do you feel that?" She straightened. "Feel what?" A twig snapped in the darkness. We froze. The forest went unnaturally still, no owls, no insects, no rustling leaves. My heart began to pound as I shifted closer to the pool's edge, ready to run. Then he appeared. The Alpha King stepped into the clearing, his tall, powerful form outlined by moonlight. He wore loose black trousers, his bare chest strong and carved like stone. Dark hair brushed his shoulders and his amber eyes burned with a predator's focus. "Your Majesty," Lisa gasped, lowering her gaze at once and sinking deeper into the water to cover herself. I should have done the same. I should have looked away, bowed my head, and remembered my place. Instead, I stared. He moved closer, his eyes locked on mine, and the air seemed to thicken with every step. "Leave us," he said. His voice was deep and commanding, echoing through the clearing. Lisa looked at me, fear flashing across her face. "It's okay," I told her, though my throat was dry and my heart raced with more than fear. "Go, I'll be fine." After a brief pause, she climbed out, wrapped herself in her cloak, and hurried down the path toward the pack grounds. She glanced back once before disappearing into the trees. When we were alone, the Alpha King approached the edge of the spring, his movements smooth and deliberate, like a hunter closing in. I stayed where I was, the warm water brushing my collarbone, offering little protection as I waited, exposed, tense, and unable to look away. My heart slammed so hard against my ribs I was sure he could hear it. "You're the Barren Omega," he said, not a question, a verdict. The words stung, sharp and ugly, but I forced myself to lift my chin and meet his eyes. "I have a name," I said, surprised by my own nerves. "It's Eleanor." Something flickered across his face, interest, maybe amusement. Alphas weren't used to being corrected, and certainly not by an Omega. "Eleanor," he repeated slowly as if tasting it. "Do you know who I am?" "Everyone does," I answered. "You're King Raphael Blackstone, Alpha of all Alphas, ruler of the 7 territories." A slow smile curved his mouth, dangerous and knowing, the kind of smile that made my instinct tighten in my chest. "And yet you speak to me like we're equals." "If I've offended you, forgive me," I said, though I felt no regret. I've never been good at pretending I'm smaller than I am. Instead of anger, his smile deepened, flashing white teeth. "No," he said softly, "I don't imagine you are." He crouched at the edge of the spring, lowering himself until our faces were level. Up close, his amber eyes held flecks of gold, bright and unsettling. His scent wrapped around me, pine, damp earth, something untamed. My Omega instincts stirred despite my will, a traitorous pull that made my breath hitch. "That's what interests me about you," he said. "You were rejected today. Shamed in front of your entire pack, and yet you stand tall, you don't beg, you do fold." I swallowed. What choice do I have? My voice was steady, even if my hands weren't. "If I crumble every time I'm reminded of what I lack, I'd spend my life drowning in it." His gaze sharpened, searching my face as if he were peeling back layers. "And what do you think you lack, little Omega?" The question hit harder than I expected. "I can't bear children," I said. "I'm cursed." "Cursed," he echoed, thoughtful. "And who told you that?" "My elders, the healers." He reached out without warning, his fingers brushing the silver pendant resting against my throat. The touch sent a shock through me, heat racing along my skin. His hand lingered, close enough to steal my breath. "Or perhaps," he murmured, "someone who knew better than any healer what truly lies inside you." I couldn't answer. His nearness muddled my thoughts, his eyes holding me in place. When he finally pulled away, the loss felt sharp, like something vital had been taken. "You should go back to your pack," King Raphael said, rising smoothly to his full height. "These woods aren't safe after dark." Not for an Omega alone. The dismissal burned more than it should have. "I've walked these forests since I was a child," I said, summoning my courage, "and I'm not helpless." A low chuckle rolled from his chest. "No," he said, "I don't think you are." He turned away, then paused, glancing back at me. "We'll speak again, Eleanor." It wasn't an invitation, it was a promise. Before I could respond, he vanished into the trees, leaving only shadows, steam rising from the spring, and my heart pounding like a drum. I stayed in the water until my fingers wrinkled and the warmth faded, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Why would the Alpha King seek me out? Why would he care about a Barren Omega from a minor pack? His words echoed in my mind. Someone who knew better than any healer what truly lies within you. What did he know that I did? When I finally returned to the pack grounds, the feast was still roaring with life. Music and laughter spilled from the great hall, painfully bright against the storm inside my chest. I slipped past unnoticed, heading for the small cottage on the edge of the settlement, the place that served as both my home and my healing room. Inside, the familiar scent of dried herbs and brewed tinctures wrapped around me like a thin comfort. I lit a single candle and sank onto my narrow bed, exhaustion settling deep in my bones. Sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw amber eyes and felt phantom warmth in my throat. Dawn found me still awake, hands busy with work out of habit. I finished grinding willow bark for a pain remedy when a sharp knock at the door made me jump. I opened it to find Lisa, her face pale and tight with fear. "Eleanor, you have to come now, it's Elder Mira." She collapsed during the night. I grabbed my healer's bag and followed her through the village without a word. Inside the elder's cottage, the air felt heavy and wrong. Elder Mira lay on her bed, her breathing shallow, her skin drained of color. What happened? I asked, kneeling beside her and pressing my hand to her forehead. "She's burning up," one of the elders said, pacing near the wall, wringing his hands. She was laughing and eating at the feast, no signs at all. Then she woke in the middle of the night, confused, shaking, calling out nonsense. Another elder lowered her voice. "She's been asking for you." I frowned as I stepped closer to the bed. Elder Mira had never hidden her dislike for me. She had been one of the loudest voices calling me cursed, broken, and unfit. So why would she ask for me now? Her eyelids fluttered as I touched her wrist, checking her pulse. Slowly, her gaze focused, and recognition sparked in her cloudy eyes. "Eleanor," she breathed, her voice thin and rough like dry leaves scraping stone. "You came." "Of course I did," I said gently, already crushing herbs and measuring leaves into a cup. "I'm the healer." Her hand snapped out, gripping my wrist with shocking strength. Her fingers were hot, almost burning. "Not just a healer," she whispered. For one sharp moment, her eyes cleared completely, piercing and aware. "You never were." A cold slid down my spine. "What are you talking about?" But whatever clarity she'd found vanished just as fast. Her eyes rolled back, her body stiffened, and she began to convulse violently. "Everyone out," I barked, my voice cutting through the panic. "Now I need room." The elders hesitated only a second before rushing from the cottage. I moved fast, every thought narrowing to the woman fighting for breath in front of me. I pressed cool clothes to her skin, forced willow bark tea between her lips, crushed fever root, and rubbed it along her spine. Hours blurred together. Sweat soaked my dress. My hands trembled, but I didn't stop. By midday, the heat finally broke. Her breathing evened out, the violent shivers faded. Elder Mira slept deeply, peacefully, as if nothing had happened. I sank back onto my heels, exhausted to the bone, relief crashing through me so hard my chest ached. One by one, the elders drifted away, murmuring thanks, leaving the cottage quiet except for the soft rise and fall of her breath. Alone, my thoughts turned dark and restless. "Not just a healer, you never were. What had she meant? You have a gift." I spun around. King Raphael stood in the doorway, his broad shoulders nearly filling the small space. I hadn't heard him approach. That alone sent unease curling through my stomach. "Your Majesty," I said, forcing myself upright despite my shaking legs. "If you've come to see Elder Mira, she's resting. She shouldn't be disturbed." I didn't come for her. His amber eyes locked onto mine, sharp and unsettling. "I came for you." Heat rushed to my face as I became painfully aware of myself, my hair loose from its braid, my sleeves stained with herbs, my dress wrinkled and damp. "Me?" I asked. "Why?" Instead of answering, he stepped inside and shut the door. The cottage suddenly felt too small. His presence filled it with the scent of earth, pine, and something wild and dangerous that made my pulse quicken despite myself. "You saved her life," he said, glancing toward the bed. "Others would have failed." I shook my head. "I did what any healer would do." "No." His voice was calm but absolute. "What you did takes more than skill, it takes instinct, power, the ability to feel what others cannot." A warning stirred inside me. "Why are you really here, Your Majesty? Our pack has nothing an Alpha King would want." His mouth curved into a faint smile that never reached his eyes. Straight to the point, just like an Omega. He stepped closer. I had to tilt my head back to meet his gaze. "I've been watching you, Eleanor Stone," he said quietly, "long before last night's ritual." My heart skipped. "Watching me? Why?" "Because you're different," he said simply. "Because you're not what they think." "And what do they think I am?" "Cursed," he replied. "Empty, useless." His fingers brushed my cheek, barely there, yet enough to make my breath catch. I knew I hadn't imagined it, but I know better. I stepped back unsettled by his certainty. What do you want from me? He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable, then he reached into his pocket and opened his hand. A single seed lay in his palm, small, black, ordinary except for the faint silver shimmer that moved across its surface like moonlight on water. Plant this tonight, he said softly. Under the waning moon, water it with 3 drops of your blood. My stomach tightened, and then... Wait, I stared at the seed, fascination tangled with fear. What will grow? The truth, he said. Plant it if you want to know what you really are. A low groan came from the bed. I turned sharply toward Elder Mira, and when I looked back, King Raphael was gone. Only the seed remained, resting on the small table near the door. I slipped it into my pocket just as Elder Mira's eyes fluttered open. She looked around in confusion before her gaze found me. Eleanor, she whispered weakly, and somehow I knew nothing would ever be the same. What happened? She murmured, her voice rough and weak. You had a fever, I said softly, lifting her head and helping her drink from the clay cup. It was bad, but it's gone now. You need rest? She frowned, her brows pulling together as she searched her memory. I dreamed strange things, she whispered. The Alpha King was here. Just dreams, I told her quickly. I tried to sound calm, but my fingers slid on their own toward the hidden seed in my pocket. Fever does that, it makes the mind wander. She shook her head slowly. No, not just dreams. He was here yesterday at the ritual, watching you. Her eyes were still dull with sickness, yet there was something sharp in them now, something that made my chest tighten. He knows, doesn't he? She asked quietly. About the prophecy. Cold fear crawled down my spine. What prophecy, Elder Mira? I asked. But her strength was already gone. Her eyes fluttered shut, her breathing evening out as sleep claimed her again. I stayed beside her long after, staring into the firelight, my thoughts tangled and racing with questions I didn't dare speak. By nightfall, she was strong enough for another pack member to watch her. I returned to my cottage, exhausted to the bone yet unable to rest. The seed hidden in my pocket felt hot, almost alive, pressing against my skin like it wanted to be noticed. I took it out and placed it on my small wooden table. Candlelight danced across its strange surface as the Alpha King's words echoed in my mind. Plant it beneath the waning moon. Water it with your blood. It sounded like something pulled from an old, dangerous legend. And still, he believed it would reveal what I truly was. I could have destroyed it, thrown it into the fire, and ended this madness. That would have been the smart choice. I didn't. Curiosity burned stronger than fear. As the night grew quiet, I filled a clay pot with dark soil from my herb garden and pressed the seed gently into the center. I pricked my finger on a thorn and let 3 drops of blood fall onto the earth. Grow, I whispered, feeling foolish and exposed. Show me what I need to know. I placed the pot on the windowsill where the pale moonlight touched it, then went to bed, expecting nothing. That night I dreamed. I stood in a forest unlike any I had ever seen. Trees rose like giants around me, their trunks whiter than houses, their leaves forming a glowing roof high above. I walked barefoot across cool earth, a path appearing beneath each step as if the forest itself guided me. At its heart stood a massive tree, its bark shining silver white. A small door was set into its trunk, shaped perfectly for me. A voice whispered from inside, familiar, powerful, and unsettling. Come in, daughter of the moon. It's time you remembered who you are. I reached for the door and woke with a gasp. Morning light spilled across my bed. My heart hammered as the dream clung to me, vivid and heavy. Then I remembered the seed. I leapt up and rushed to the window. The pot hadn't moved. The soil looked untouched. But from its center rose a tiny silver shoot, no taller than my finger, its 2 perfect leaves reaching for the sun. My breath caught. That wasn't possible. Nothing grew overnight. I touched one leaf. Power surged through me, sharp and overwhelming. My vision exploded with images. A silver forest, a full moon blazing overhead, wolves running free beneath its light, and a woman with my face wearing a crown made of stars. A knock at the door shattered everything. I jerked my hand away, trembling. Lisa stood outside, worry written across her face. Eleanor, she said, the council wants to see you. The council? I frowned. They never summoned me. They wouldn't say why, she added, lowering her voice. But Elder Mira is there, and the Alpha King's guards have arrived. My blood went cold. His guards, is he here? She shook her head. No, but they're asking questions about you. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What's going on? Why would the Alpha King care about you? I don't know, I said, and this time it was the truth. As we walked toward the council hall, I glanced back at my cottage. The silver seedling stood glowing in the sunlight, reaching upward like it had a purpose of its own. A knot formed in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just stepped onto a path I could never leave. The council hall rose at the center of the settlement, its stone walls worn smooth by time. Pack members crowded around it, their faces tight with concern and curiosity as Lisa and I approached, and every instinct in me screamed that whatever waited inside would change everything. 2 men stood at the entrance, strangers to me, their bodies stiff and watchful. Black uniforms hugged their frames, the silver wolf crest on their chests catching the light. The Alpha King's personal guard. Their eyes swept over me without warmth, pausing briefly on my pale hair before they stepped aside. I walked past them, but the weight of their judgment followed me like a shadow. Inside the hall, the council waited in a curved formation, their faces tight with unease. The air felt heavy, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Elder Mira sat among them. She looked stronger than I expected after everything she had endured, her sharp gaze locking onto me the moment I entered. It made my skin prickle. At the center of the hall stood a man who didn't need an introduction to command attention. He was tall and solid, his dark hair streaked with silver, a long scar cutting from his temple down to his jaw. He wore the same uniform as the guards outside, but the markings were different: higher rank, greater authority. "Eleanor Stone," he said, his voice deep and steady echoing through the chamber. "I am Commander Thorn, head of the Alpha King's Royal Guard." I dipped my head, aware of the tension thickening around me. "Commander, I hear you've been asking about me." A low murmur spread through the council. Elder Mira's mouth tightened, but Thorn didn't react. "Yes," he replied calmly. "By order of King Raphael, you are to come with me to the capital immediately." The room erupted into shocked whispers. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The words didn't make sense. "On what grounds?" Elder Brennan demanded, pushing himself to his feet. "Eleanor belongs to this pack. If she's committed some crime against the crown, she has not," Commander Thorn cut in. "The king's interest in her is personal." The silence that followed was suffocating. Heat rushed to my face, anger, embarrassment, something close to fear. "Personal?" I echoed. "I don't understand." Thorn studied me like a puzzle. "It is not my place to explain His Majesty's reasons. You will learn more once you arrive at the palace." "And if I refuse?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. The hall went deathly quiet. Refusing the Alpha King wasn't defiance, it was suicide. Commander Thorn's jaw tightened. That would be a mistake. Elder Mira stood then, her movements slow but firm. "A word in private, Commander." She gestured toward a small side chamber. After a pause, he followed her. The moment the door closed, the council exploded into argument. "What did you do?" Elder Brennan snapped at me. "Why would the Alpha King single you out?" "Nothing," I said, though the seed hidden in my cottage and my brief, unsettling encounters with King Raphael told a different story. "I've barely spoken to him." "But you have spoken to him," someone pressed. "When, where?" Before I could answer, the side door opened. Elder Mira returned first, her face carefully blank. Commander Thorn followed, his complexion slightly pale. "The council grants permission," Elder Mira announced. "Eleanor will travel to the capital. She leaves at once." My heart slammed against my ribs. "I don't get a choice." Her eyes met mine, and for the first time something cracked through her usual coldness. "Fear, regret." "No," she said quietly, "you don't." Commander Thorn stepped closer. "You have 1 hour to gather your belongings. A carriage is waiting." I looked around the hall, desperate for support. No one met my gaze, not even Lisa. Her eyes were lowered, her shoulders slumped. 1 hour, I whispered. I walked out in a daze, barely noticing the pack members staring as I passed. Lisa hurried to my side, her presence the only thing keeping me grounded. "I'll help you pack," she said softly once we were clear. I nodded. "Lisa, why is this happening? Why would the Alpha King want me?" She shook her head, confusion written all over her face. "I don't know, but maybe this isn't all bad. The capital is different. Omegas have more freedom there, more protection. Or more danger," I said, thinking of the strange seed growing in my cottage. "What if he knows something about me?" We reached my small home. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open, fear coiling tight in my chest. The silver sprout on my windowsill had changed while I was gone. It wasn't fragile anymore. The stem was thick, almost the width of my thumb, and its leaves had spread wide, shining like polished metal. Lisa stopped short the moment she saw it, her breath caught. "What is that?" she asked. "I've never seen anything like it." "It was a gift," I said, my voice unsure. "From the Alpha King." Her eyes went wide. "Eleanor, you can't leave that here. If it came from him, it matters." She was right. Whatever secrets this plant carried, whatever truth it was tied to, I couldn't abandon it now. I moved carefully, lifting it from the soil and settling it into a smaller pot, one I could carry without breaking it. After that, I packed the few things that truly mattered to me: my mother's pendant, my healer's journal, worn soft with use, and a bundle of rare herbs I'd gathered over the years. As I worked, a strange feeling bloomed deep inside me. Warm, steady, almost alive. It pulsed in time with my heartbeat, making my breath hitch. I pressed my palm to my stomach, frowning. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked, watching me closely. "I'm fine," I said quickly, "just nerves." I wasn't sure I believed it. We finished long before time ran out. Everything I owned fit into one plain canvas bag. I stood still and looked around the small cottage, the walls, the hearth, the quiet corners where memories still lived. This was the only home I'd known since my parents died. I wondered if I would ever walk through this door again. "I'm scared," I whispered. Lisa wrapped her arms around me, holding me tight. "You're stronger than you think," she said fiercely. "Whatever waits for you in the capital, you'll face it the same way you face everything else." I wanted her confidence, I needed it. A sharp knock broke the moment my time was up. Commander Thorne stood outside, his eyes flicked to my single bag and something like approval crossed his face. "That's all?" he asked. I nodded, gripping the strap. "I don't need much." He motioned down the path. A black carriage waited there, sleek and polished, its surface gleaming in the sun. A silver wolf with amber eyes was stamped on the door, the royal mark. "Your ride," he said, dry amusement in his voice. I turned back to Lisa and hugged her once more, my throat tight. "Please take care of my herbs," I whispered, "and yourself." "I will," she said softly. "You'll send a word." "As soon as I can," I promised, even though I had no idea if I'd be allowed to. Commander Thorne cleared his throat. "We need to leave now if we want to reach the capital before dark." I took one last look at my cottage, then followed him. Villagers had gathered along the path, watching in silence. Some looked confused, others looked jealous. A few looked afraid. Elder Mira stood among them, her sharp gaze locked on me. As I passed, she suddenly grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were cold. "Remember who you are," she whispered, so low only I could hear. "When the moment comes, remember." Before I could ask what she meant, the commander guided me inside the carriage. The door shut with a heavy sound, sealing me in. Moments later, the wheels rolled forward and the village began to fade behind us. I sat across from Commander Thorne, the small pot resting carefully in my lap. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The carriage swayed with the road, but it did nothing to calm the tight knot in my chest. "You must have questions," he said at last. I met his gaze. "Too many, and I doubt you'll answer them." A slight smile touched his mouth. "Try," I didn't hesitate. "Why does the Alpha King want me? What does he expect from me?" His face stayed carefully unreadable. "The King's reasons belong to him, but I can tell you this, you are not the first Omega he's noticed. You are the first he has ordered brought to him." My stomach twisted. "That's not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be," he said calmly. I looked out the window, watching familiar trees give way to rolling hills I'd never seen before. "Has he told you what he thinks I am?" I asked quietly. Something flickered in his eyes. "Surprise, maybe weariness. What makes you ask that?" "He told me I'm not what my pack believes," I said. My fingers brushed one silver leaf and that strange warmth stirred again, faint but real. "That I'm not cursed." The carriage rolled on. The silence stretched so long it felt heavy enough to break. I waited, heart pounding, unsure whether an answer would come at all. He let out a long breath, and for the first time since we'd met, his rigid posture softened. "I've served King Raphael for 30 years, he said quietly. "I've watched him stand against enemies that would make most alphas tremble." His eyes shifted to me, sharp and serious. "I have never seen him look at someone the way he looks at you." "That's not an answer," I said, my fingers tightening in my lap. "No," he agreed, "it's a warning." He leaned back slightly. "Whatever interest he has in you, whatever game he's playing, be careful. The king is not someone you challenge and walk away from." After that, the rest of the journey passed with little conversation. I watched the world change outside the carriage window. Thick forests slowly thinned into open plains, endless and golden, until stone structures began to appear on the horizon. The closer we drew, the more unreal it felt. Then Lunaries revealed itself. I pressed my face to the glass, completely forgetting my fear for a moment. I had never left pack territory before. The capital was nothing like the stories. Towering stone buildings stretched upward, their windows catching the late sun like fire. The streets below teemed with life, alphas, betas, omegas, moving with purpose, dressed in fabrics finer than anything I had ever touched. And above it all, crowning the tallest hill, stood the palace. It was massive, built of pale stone and shimmering glass, its sharp spires reaching skyward as if clawing for the moon itself. "It's beautiful," I breathed. "And dangerous," Commander Thorne said beside me. "Beauty usually is." The carriage rolled through iron gates that stood taller than any tree in my village. Soldiers in black uniforms stood guard, their presence heavy and unquestioned. Beyond the gates, the palace grounds unfolded in perfect symmetry, lush gardens, clear fountains, wide courtyards designed to impress and to remind visitors how small they were. It worked. We stopped at a side entrance, not the grand front gates, but still more elegant than any home I'd ever known. Commander Thorne stepped down first, then offered his hand. I took it, my legs unsteady as my feet met the stone. "Welcome to Moonstone Palace," he said formally, "your new home." The words sent a cold shiver through me. This wasn't a visit, this was permanent. A woman appeared in the doorway, tall, poised, with steel-gray hair pulled tightly back and eyes that missed nothing. "Commander," she said with a brief nod, then her gaze cut to me. "This is the Omega?" "Yes, Lady Rosalie," he replied. Eleanor Stone. Her eyes swept over me, my plain dress, my worn shoes, the small pot I held protectively to my chest. "His Majesty expected you earlier," she said coolly. "The council required encouragement." Commander Thorne inclined his head. Something like that. Her lips thinned. I see. She turned sharply. Come along, girl, you'll need attention before your audience with the king. My audience? My heart lurched. When? Tonight, she said without slowing. At the full moon ceremony. Commander Thorne rested a steady hand on my shoulder. Lady Rosalie is the king's seneschal. She'll ensure you're cared for. And you? I asked, panic rising. I didn't want to be left alone, not here. I have duties, he said, but we'll meet again. Then more quietly, remember what I told you, be careful. And just like that, he was gone. I followed Lady Rosalie inside, clutching the silver seedling to my chest like a charm against fate. My mind raced with questions I had no answers to. What could the Alpha King possibly want from me, a Baron Omega who had never mattered to anyone before? The palace swallowed us whole. Corridor after corridor stretched endlessly, each more lavish than the last. Marble floors gleamed beneath my feet. Tapestries lined the walls, woven with ancient wolf legends, battles, moons, and crowns. Servants bowed as we passed, their polite expressions unable to fully hide their curiosity. Finally, Lady Rosalie stopped before an intricately carved wooden door. Your chambers, she announced, pushing it open. I froze. The room was enormous, larger than my entire cottage back home. Sunlight poured through tall windows, lighting plush chairs, a polished writing desk, and rich fabrics that shimmered softly. Beyond an archway sat a bed so large it felt unreal, draped in silvery blue silks that caught the light like water. This can't be right, I whispered. There's been a mistake. There hasn't, Lady Rosalie said evenly. His Majesty chose these rooms himself. They border the royal gardens. She gestured to glass doors that opened onto a private balcony thick with greenery. He thought you might prefer being near plants. Her eyes flicked to the seedling in my arms, something unreadable crossing her face before it vanished. A bath has been prepared, she continued. Afterwards, you'll be dressed for the ceremony. I stood there, heart pounding, surrounded by luxury that felt like a trap, holding on to the only familiar thing I had, wondering what waited for me beneath the full moon and what the Alpha King truly intended to do with me. The king expects everyone in his palace to follow proper rules. I'm not a guest, I said softly, my voice barely carried. I'm a prisoner. For the first time since she'd entered the room, Lady Rosalie's hard expression cracked just a little. No, child, she said. A prisoner would not be given rooms in the royal wing, nor would they be brought before the court as an honored presence during the full moon. Her words left me unsettled. Before I could answer, she clapped her hands once. The door opened and 3 young Omega women stepped inside. They carried folded towels, glass bottles filled with scented oils, and a long garment bag that shimmered faintly in the light. They will help you prepare, Lady Rosalie said. I'll return when it's time. Then she turned and left without another glance. The 3 women looked at me openly now, curiosity written all over their faces. Not cruel, just hungry for answers. I'm Lily, said the tallest one. She had warm brown skin and eyes that felt gentle instead of judging. This is Sarah. And Ivy, we're here to get you ready for tonight. I walked to the window and placed my silver seedling carefully on the table, making sure it still caught the last of the daylight. Its leaves trembled slightly, as if sensing the shift in the air. Then I turned back to them with a tired breath. I don't think I have much choice. Lily smiled in a way that told me she understood more than she said. The first day is always the hardest. Palace life feels strange at first, but you'll survive it. They led me into an adjoining chamber and I stopped short. The bath wasn't a tub. It was a pool sunk into the floor, wide and deep, filled with steaming water that smelled sweet and wild. My fear didn't vanish, but my body betrayed me anyway as I stepped in. The warmth wrapped around my skin, loosening muscles I hadn't realized were clenched. They washed my hair gently, working fragrant oils through the strands. Jasmine, moonflower. The scents curled into the air, heavy and calming. My eyes closed despite myself. As they worked, they talked quietly, asking about my village, my work as a healer, my life before the forest, and the king's wolves. I answered carefully, measuring every word. I still didn't know what I was here or who I was to them. Eventually, Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. Is it true what they're saying? I stilled. What are they saying? That you're the Omega from the prophecy. The water suddenly felt too hot. Elder Mira's fevered voice echoed in my mind, sharp and unsettling. What prophecy? I asked. The 3 exchanged glances. You do know, Ivy whispered, her eyes wide. The prophecy of the silver wolf. The door opened. That's enough, Lady Rosalie said sharply as she entered. Finish preparing for her. The ceremony begins in 1 hour. Silence fell instantly. They helped me from the bath and wrapped me in soft towels, their movements quick and focused now. Back in the bedroom, they opened the garment bag. I gasped. The gown inside didn't look real. Silver blue silk flowed like liquid moonlight, catching every flicker of light in the room. Tiny crystals were sewn across it like scattered stars. It was beautiful, otherworldly, terrifying. I can't wear this, I said, my protest weak even to my own ears. You will, Lady Rosalie replied calmly. The king chose it himself. The gown slid over me as if it belonged there. It fit perfectly, too perfectly. My hair was twisted up and pinned with small crescent-shaped silver pieces. A light touch of makeup sharpened my features, turning me into someone I didn't recognize. When they finally stepped aside and let me face the mirror, my breath caught. The woman staring back at me looked powerful, quietly dangerous, nothing like the simple healer I had always been. Now, Lady Rosalie murmured almost to herself, you look like what you truly are. I turned on her. And what is that supposed to mean? She met my gaze without flinching. That is for the king to tell you. A knock cut through the room. Commander Thorne stood in the doorway, dressed in black ceremonial armor trimmed with silver. A sword rested at his hip. His face was unreadable. It's time. I glanced once more at my silver seedling. It had grown again. The stem was thick now, the leaves gleaming like metal in the fading light. Should I bring it? I asked. Lady Rosalie shook her head. It will remain here. The king has other truths planned for tonight. Commander Thorne led me through corridor after corridor, each one grander than the last. Stone gave way to silver pillars and high arches. The sound of voices grew louder with every step. When we stopped before massive double doors guarded by royal soldiers, my heart began to pound. Beyond this is the Grand Hall, he said quietly. All 7 territories are gathered for the full moon. Fear tightened in my chest. Why am I here? I whispered. What does the king want from me? For the first time, his expression softened. Courage, he said. Everything will be revealed. The doors opened, sound crashed over me like a storm, and I stepped forward into it. The Grand Hall swallowed me whole the moment I stepped inside. The ceiling rose so high it vanished into shadows, held up by massive columns carved like ancient trees frozen in stone. Hundreds of nobles filled the space, wrapped in silk, velvet, and jewels. Their voices blended into a constant hum until we entered. The sound broke, heads turned. Eyes locked onto us, onto me. Panic crawled up my spine and every instinct screamed for me to run. But Commander Thorne kept moving, guiding me down the long aisle that cut through the center of the hall. At the far end, raised above everyone else, waited the dais. 3 thrones stood there, and in the largest one sat the man who had shattered my life in just 2 days, King Raphael Blackstone. He looked completely at ease, like the entire world bent naturally around him. His black attire was edged with silver, sharp and elegant, and a crown of platinum and obsidian rested against his dark hair. Power clung to him like a second skin. When his amber eyes met mine, the corner of his mouth curved upward. That single smile sent a shiver straight through me. As we moved closer, whispers spread through the hall, no longer careful enough to stay hidden. I caught broken pieces as they floated past. The one from the prophecy, impossible, she's barren, the Alpha King would never choose her. Commander Thorne stopped at the foot of the dais and dropped into a deep bow. I stayed frozen, unable to tear my gaze away from the Alpha King. Your Majesty, Thorne announced. I present Eleanor stone as commanded. King Raphael stood. The movement was smooth, almost predatory, and the hall fell dead silent. Eleanor, he said, his voice rolled through the space without effort. Welcome to Moonstone Palace. I forced myself to move and dipped into a small curtsy, painfully aware of how many eyes were watching my every breath. Thank you for your hospitality, Your Majesty. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd at my direct reply. Raphael only smiled wider. Come, he said, holding out his hand. Stand with me. My heart slammed against my ribs as I climbed the steps. When I placed my hand in his, warmth spread through my fingers. His grip was steady, gentle, but unyielding. That same strange spark I'd felt at the hot springs flared again, racing through my chest and leaving me unsteady. He guided me to his side, turning us to face the crowd. Noble lords and ladies of the 7 territories, he announced. His voice carried absolute command. Tonight's full moon ceremony is unlike any before it. I have ruled alone since the death of my queen. Tonight that changes. My breath caught. Surely he didn't mean, I present to you a Eleanor stone, he continued, his hand still holding mine. The Omega is named in the ancient prophecy, the mate of the silver wolf. The hall exploded. Shouts of disbelief, gasps, angry protests, and noise crashed over us from every direction. A woman in a deep crimson gown stepped forward, her beauty sharp and furious. This is insanity, she cried. That girl is a common Omega. She cannot be the one spoken of in the prophecy. She's barren, everyone knows it. Raphael's expression hardened, his fingers tightened around mine, grounding me even as fear surged. Lady Victoria, he said coldly, your concern is misplaced. Eleanor's true nature has been hidden even from herself. Then prove it, she snapped. If she is truly the silver wolf's mate, let her show the power the prophecy promises. Silence fell like a blade. Raphael turned to me, up close, his amber eyes searched mine, intense and unflinching. Do you trust me? He asked softly, meant only for me. I hesitated. This man had torn me from everything I knew, spoken in riddles, and changed my fate without asking. And yet something deep inside me, something wild and instinctive, recognized him. "I don't know you," I whispered. "But you will," he said. He lifted his voice again. "The proof will come at moonrise. Until then, the ceremony will continue." He led me to the smaller throne beside his. The moment I sat, another wave of whispers rolled through the hall. I was no longer a guest, I was being displayed. As nobles approached one by one, bowing and offering forced smiles, I leaned toward him. "What prophecy?" I demanded quietly. "And why do you think it's me?" His gaze stayed on the crowd, but his words were meant only for my ears. "The prophecy of the silver wolf speaks of an Omega believed to be Barren, one who will bear twins to the Alpha King, twins who will unite the 7 territories and end centuries of bloodshed." My head spun. "That's impossible." The healers said I couldn't. Now he looked at me, his eyes burned with certainty. They were wrong, or they lied. Before I could ask anything else, the sun slipped below the horizon. Moonlight began to spill through the high windows, pale and waiting. The hall fell silent once more. Moonlight slid through the tall windows of the great hall, slow and heavy, spilling silver across the raised platform. The air felt tight, charged, as if the room itself was holding its breath. King Raphael rose from his seat and reached for me, steadying me as he pulled me to my feet. "The moment has arrived," he declared. His voice echoed off stone and steel. "Under tonight's full moon, the truth will stand uncovered." He guided me forward, right into the brightest wash of moonlight at the center of the platform. When he turned me to face him, his eyes were sharp, searching, almost reverent. "Do you remember the seed I gave you?" he asked. I nodded, my thoughts flashing to the strange silver plant growing in my chambers, alive in a way that made my skin prickle. "What is it?" I asked quietly. "A moonflower," he said. "It's rare. It only grows near those who carry moon magic in their blood." "It responded to you, Eleanor." His grip tightened slightly. "Because you are not what your pack named you. You were never cursed, never empty. You are a lunar Omega, the last of an ancient bloodline believed to be gone forever." The words felt distant, unreal, yet something inside me stirred, deep and aching, like a memory trying to wake. My chest tightened. "I don't understand," I whispered. "You will," he said gently. He took both my hands in his. "The full moon exposes what has been hidden. Let it reveal who you truly are." The moment the moonlight touched our joined hands, heat bloomed inside me. It started low in my core, spreading outward in slow waves. My breath caught as the warmth intensified, flooding my limbs, my chest, my skin, until it felt like light was pressing outward from within me. Gasps swept through the hall. Silver glow poured from my body, soft and radiant, wrapping me in something ancient and powerful. And with that light came knowledge, memories I had never lived yet somehow knew. I saw endless forests lit by moonfare, sacred rituals beneath open skies, women with silver eyes standing unafraid, commanding forces that bent the world itself, healing, seeing, power woven with grace. Truth settled into my bones. "The silver wolf's mate," I whispered, the words falling from my mouth as if they had always belonged there. Raphael nodded, his amber eyes glowing now with something fierce and proud. "My mate, my queen." The warmth in my belly sharpened suddenly, pulsing with purpose. Instinct took over. My hands flew to my stomach as understanding crashed into me all at once. "The twins," I gasped, tears burning my eyes. "They're real, they're here." Shock tore through the hall. A wave of stunned silence followed, then broken breaths. Lady Victoria stumbled back, her face drained of color. Others dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by the weight of what they were witnessing. Raphael stepped closer, not the king now but my mate, and placed his hand over mine. His touch was careful, reverent, as if he feared disturbing something sacred. "The prophecy completes itself," he said, his voice thick. "The rejected Omega, though barren and broken, carries the Alpha King's heirs." "How?" I asked, still reeling. "How is this possible? Lunar Omegas were hunted nearly to extinction." "They were feared," Raphael replied quietly. "Their power, moon magic, healing, sight beyond sight, threatened those who didn't understand it. The survivors hid. They buried their gifts so deeply that even their children never knew the truth." Realization struck me hard. "My mother's pendant," I whispered, fingers brushing the silver moon at my throat. "She said light always returns after darkness." Raphael nodded. "She knew what you were. She left that charm to shield you until the right time, and the seed, the moonflower, was a test. Only a lunar Omega could bring it to life." His gaze softened. "When I first saw you at the ritual, your power reached for mine across the clearing, but I needed certainty." Elder Mira's fevered whispers came back to me. "She knew," I said, "didn't she?" "She suspected," Raphael confirmed. "Some still remember the old ways. They saw the signs, your healing, your instincts, small cracks where your true nature was already breaking through." The moonlight grew brighter, and so did the glow beneath my skin. Inside me, the twins pulsed with quiet strength, already bound to the moon magic flowing through my veins. "What happens now?" I asked, the weight of destiny pressing down on my chest. Raphael's expression softened, and for the first time since I had met him, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. "That choice is yours, Eleanor," he said gently. "The prophecy has begun, but it does not command you. I would have you as my queen, my mate, the mother of my children, but only if you choose it freely." The hall stood silent, and so did my heart. I studied his face, looking past the title of Alpha King and seeing the man beneath it. A man who had carried the weight of a prophecy for most of his life. A man who had searched for me not only because fate demanded it, but because some quiet part of him had always known I existed. I swallowed and forced myself to ask the question that mattered most, and if I decide to return to my village. I needed to hear it, needed to know my choice was real. A flicker of pain crossed his eyes before he nodded once. He didn't argue, he didn't threaten, he simply spoke. I would return under his protection with food, shelter, and safety promised for the children. He told me he would never force me to stay. That was not the bond he wanted. The honesty in his voice hit deeper than any command ever could. It stirred the part of me that had always stood apart, the part that had survived being unwanted, overlooked, and alone. With a calm strength I didn't know I possessed, a strength passed down from my lunar blood, I let my thoughts drift. I saw my small cottage at the edge of the prairies. I saw myself as a healer, tolerated but never embraced. I felt the loneliness I had learned to live with. Then I thought of the silver seedling growing in my chamber, glowing brighter with each passing hour, just like the lives growing inside me. And finally I looked at him again, powerful, feared, born to rule, yet standing before me offering freedom instead of chains, even when prophecy had already given him the right to claim me. Above us, the moon rose to its highest point, pouring silver light over the courtyard. It wrapped around us like a blessing, soft but undeniable. In that stillness, my choice became clear. I stepped closer to Raphael, our joined hands still resting over my belly, over the fragile miracle we shared. I lifted my gaze to his. "I choose to stay," I said quietly. Not because fate demanded it, not because prophecy said I must, but because something in me recognized something in him, because the rejected Omega in me saw the loneliness behind the Alpha's crown. The tension in his body broke all at once. Relief and joy washed over his face, raw and unguarded. He leaned forward until his forehead rested against mine, his breath warm and unsteady. "My queen," he whispered, "my mate." Before the watching nobles, beneath the full moon's watchful eye, the Omega, once whispered to be barren, once treated as disposable, sealed her choice with a kiss. A kiss filled with promise, courage, and a future neither of us had dared to imagine just days before. Inside me, the Alpha King's twins grew stronger, wrapped in moon magic and guarded by a father's fierce devotion. They were more than children. They were hopeful, a bridge between lands long divided by fear and blood. I was no longer Ellen Stone, the barren Omega. I was Eleanor Blackstone, the silver wolf's mate, the lunar queen, the mother of what was yet to come. And for the first time in my life, I knew without doubt that I was exactly where I belonged.